Hi there. I'm Karen Sexton at Cincinnati Children's Hospital. Thanks for tuning in to learn more about school avoidance. I'm a school specialist in the partial hospitalization program, which is a psychiatric day treatment program for students ages 9 to 18 years of age. I do hope this information proves useful to you in your professional practice as you work with students throughout the year, and especially now as we help students cope with school-related anxiety due to the current pandemic. We have three objectives for today: to examine the four main reasons students avoid school, to analyze the student and family tendencies within each category, and to identify support strategies that you can recommend to staff and families when students refuse school. As we begin discussing this content, it's important for me to give credit to Christopher Kearney and his team of researchers. Through their research, Kearney and his team identified four evidence-based reasons that students refuse school. I want you to know about their language so that it can inform your knowledge and perspectives for helping students, families, and school teams. Kearney determined that students refuse school to avoid stimuli that provoke negative affectivity, to escape aversive social and evaluative situations, for attention-getting behaviors, and for the pursuit of tangible reinforcement outside of school. Over time, I adapted those evidence-based reasons into a parent-friendly version or list. In my discussion with parents, these reasons seem to resonate more easily. So I explained to parents that their child may be refusing school to avoid negative feelings or avoid social problems, to bring attention to a problem, or to enjoy time away from responsibility. Also, please know that today I'm using the term parent in a global way to include all the many constellations of parent-type figures that we have in our culture, from guardians to grandparents to guardian ad litem. Once we understand the four main reasons, we can start to think about where to focus our support. We focus on the child if he or she is refusing school to avoid negative feelings or to avoid social problems. And we focus on the family if the child is refusing school to bring attention to a problem or to enjoy time away from responsibility. Attached to this presentation, you will find two resources developed at Cincinnati Children's. There are two knowing notes written at the 7th grade level which provide talking points for you as you communicate with parents and school teams. Feel free to share these knowing notes with your social workers, doctors, or psychologists if they are the ones that are more likely to communicate directly with parents. I also want you to know that Christopher Kearney and his team developed a school refusal assessment scale which can help you determine a child's reasons for avoiding school. Once you understand the information in this presentation, it will become second nature for you to identify a child's reasons. Kearney's assessment scale can be helpful in confirming your observations and in providing documentation to a family. Now let's begin understanding more about each reason. If a child is avoiding school due to negative feelings, we can explain to the parents that their child may not know how to solve a problem at school. We can share ideas about the types of situations that are upsetting to their child. We can explain that our support will focus on helping their child's independence and self-confidence. In this category, we will often see students who are struggling to adapt or adopt new expectations. Perhaps they moved to a new school, or just moved into high school, or have to navigate changing classes or combination locks. Or perhaps they're accustomed to receiving high recognition for some ability, like being at the top of their class, and they just got moved to gifted or advanced or AP classes and are feeling uncomfortable or embarrassed about the amount of work or their current grades. These students usually have a hard time admitting or recognizing their struggle. This new discomfort doesn't make sense to them, and they may want to hide to salve their wounds or to make sure that others don't find out, or to avoid feeling their own discomfort. So they may offer contrived reasons to us, like my head hurts, I have a stomach ache, or they may actually feel these symptoms as a bodily response to their anxiety. Sometimes, when talking to their school staff, you may hear that a staff member feels that the student seems overprotected or that they've become accustomed to the parent coming up to school and solving problems for them. When the parent can't go to school to solve the problems anymore, the student can begin to feel vulnerable and unsettled, like the rug has been pulled out from beneath them. In this category, we want to help build the student's confidence in the problem situation. So you might give them a practice time in opening a combination lock, or walk them through the path of their classes and show them the in-school landmarks so that they can recognize when to turn a corner or how to find a certain room. If this is a student who feels like, hey, I had this situation down pat last year, and now this year everything seems different. Somebody changed the rules. I don't like it. You will want to help them realize that each year has its growth steps and expectations, and then help them understand how to meet this year's challenges. The true intervention for this category and many of the categories is to help them realize that we can find a solution and coping strategy for every problem instead of staying home to avoid those problems. Our second reason is about avoiding social problems. If students are refusing school to avoid social problems, we share with parents that their child may feel judged by self or others, and that children often feel confused about their ability to make or keep friends. We explain that our support will focus on helping their child's social abilities and self-esteem. In this category, we often will find students who have undeveloped social skills, who struggle with real or imagined ideas about themselves. They may say comments like, I'm so fat, I'm ugly, I'm stupid, or they may imagine that peers are thinking these things about them. Perception is key here, and you may hear them also say comments like, I don't fit in and I don't have any friends. It's important to work with these perceptions. We help these students by building their social abilities and confidence, by challenging them to think realistically about their self-perceptions. We help them interpret their social observations in a more positive light so they won't always assume the worst interpretation of an event. We can also encourage them to become involved in a facilitated social skills group or to take on a helper role or become involved in extracurricular activities. When students are refusing school in order to bring attention to a problem, you can explain to parents that your child may be asking for help through behaviors that cause attention. Children may be upset about family, school, or friend problems. Children may be expressing concern about their family's future or may be trying to keep their family healthy, happy, and together. We share that support focuses on helping the family deal with the problems that are upsetting to their child. And if we look at these families, we may see adults who are preoccupied with other family situations. For example, I've seen patients who didn't want to go to school because so much adult attention was going towards a sibling with cancer or diabetes or another illness that necessarily required adult attention for medical treatment. There were concerns about financial discussions and travel time in addition to home medical treatment. Or on the other hand, there might be a sibling who is receiving a lot of attention for a special talent or competitive ability. And while the family is organizing their travel plans for performances and competitions, including like how to transport luggage and equipment like sports gear, bikes, kayaks, and musical instruments, our students may be feeling like the luggage and equipment gets more attention than he or she receives. Sometimes Students feel called to stay home, to be the companion for a depressed parent, or to make sure the parent doesn't abandon the family by running away with another partner. Sometimes a student wants to be at home to guard against the parent accidentally or intentionally dying by suicide. You may also see parents who encourage their child to stay home, to watch TV, or to play video games together in a kind of kid, it's you and me against the world kind of scenario. It's often the parent's attempt to avoid dealing with their own problems. For example, a parent might think, if my child goes to school, then I'll have to get a job, and I don't want to do that. You will see parental control problems, power imbalances, and enmeshed relationships in which there's a blur in the boundaries and responsibilities between the parent and child. We help these families by addressing the specific problems that upset the child. We encourage parents to step into their parenting roles to restore the power imbalance so that their child can focus on being a child again. We guide parents to see their child's behavior as a signal that something is amiss, instead of thinking that their child just wants attention. It's helpful to guide these parents to family therapy so that they can continue their growth as a family into the future. Reason number 4. If students are refusing school to enjoy time away from responsibility, you can share with parents that your child may be experiencing more rewards by staying home. Sometimes children want to stay home to sleep, use electronic devices, eat snacks, or dress as they like, and that children may believe that adults will excuse assignments and responsibilities for absent students. We explain that support will focus on helping the family organize expectations for helping the child get to school. As far as the student tendencies in this group, you will see students who are not anxious about being in school. They're not avoiding or escaping any anxiety related to school. They're frequently exerting and enjoying a sense of power over their parents. They might be high-achieving students who decide, I don't want to work this hard anymore. Or they might be feeling pushed to attend high-level schools in their future, and they start to think, my parents can't make me go to that school. They enjoy staying home because it's fun and kind of cushy there right now. And once the parent power is restored, these students return to school just fine. They resume their coping abilities and manage their social and academic challenges very well. In these families, we frequently see parents who have different opinions about child rearing or different ways of thinking about their child's school refusal. We may see poor problem-solving abilities and communication problems between the adults. We may see lopsided child-parent power imbalances. We may see parents who are preoccupied with their work, our finances, or who are focusing on outside pursuits like other partners, continuing education, new business ideas, things like that. We help these families by encouraging parents to create rules and expectations and to enforce natural consequences when their child meets or ignores those expectations. We help them plan a system in which attendance at school earns time with electronic devices, and those devices are not available otherwise. You will want to prepare parents to expect their child to up the ante, which means that the child may initially escalate their behaviors in school refusal in a battle to see who really has the power. Help the parent prepare, if you do this, then we will do that scenarios, including all the way up to we will call the resource officer or the police or press legal charges if your behavior requires it. In this category, once the child realizes that the gig is over and the parental balance is restored, the student usually goes to school without problems. Sometimes students go through a depressive period as they come to terms with losing their sense of power that they had come to enjoy during that time. So the ideas that I've shared so far have been an important part of our hospital practice for years and years, and now they're becoming even more important as we begin to help students cope with COVID-19. The implications for school refusal and COVID-19 are vast. Students don't want to go to school right now as much because they're worried about their personal health as well as the members of their families and school circles. They say frequently, I don't want to get COVID and I don't want to give it to someone else. I'm scared to go to school. We are also seeing increased social anxiety related to attending school. As masks reduce the ability to read and interpret facial expressions, and as students feel awkward about keeping their social distance at their desks or lunch tables, they find it awkward to be at school. If students are working remotely from home and have to look at, set up their screen in the gallery view so that they can see all of their classmates in their online classes, they begin to look at their own picture, their own little thumbnail picture, and judge themselves negatively. They often feel certain that everyone else is looking at just them and judging them with the same standards that they are criticizing themselves. With remote learning, students who already struggle with emotional issues are more isolated and alone with their thoughts, with more time to engage in self-harm ideation or self-harm exploration. Many students feel insecure about their changing schedules as their school districts toggle between in-person attendance, hybrid attendance, and remote attendance, and they're not sure whether or when they'll see friends again. Students are beginning to say more and more, I'm sad at home, I'm worried at school, and I don't feel like I fit anywhere. And as educators, we realize that learning is facilitated through relationships, and right now, those relationships are disjointed and disrupted when students are socially distancing at school. And when students are attending school remotely, their teachers attempt to build relationships, and then the teachers are reporting their own sadness about feeling the electronic distance between their students. We're seeing increased academic anxiety as remote learning challenges students to be more independent than their abilities permit. We're seeing students who are procrastinating to do their work, who worry that they are more behind than they've ever been, who are embarrassed to ask for help remotely, who don't want their teacher to know that they're behind, who are confused by their hybrid schedules and don't know when their work is due, who feel defective because they're having trouble learning. And they are struggling remotely and are struggling to think about returning to school in person. The intervention strategies that we recommend in general for school refusal will also be helpful as we support students who have anxiety about returning to school during or after this pandemic. It will be important for us to communicate these messages to our students and families. We can help you. You're not alone. Coping takes practice. There's no magic wand. Keep taking small steps. They add up. We can help you break the work into small steps and create another makeup plan, and another if we need to. This year, the job is to do our best for all of us. As we help kids with getting back to school, one idea is to ask students to make a list of their trouble spots when they are at school. You can give the student a blank type chart and ask them to list their difficult times and why they think it's hard for them at that time. Notice the column on the far left right now, because after they write their list, you will ask them to rank their ideas like so. Frequently, students write their number one difficulty lower in the list as if it took a while for them to acknowledge it. This ranking activity will help you plan interventions based on the most worrisome problem that the student identifies. And then you can go to work on it with them. Another idea is to give the student a blank log to complete throughout their day. In this activity, you are encouraging the student to become their own detective by identifying when and how they feel. It helps them go through their day without leaving class, at least as frequently as they might have done, because now they're gathering data to share with a trusted adult at the end of the day, and they seem to be more committed to stay through their class time. Also, if a student is struggling to leave their car or walk to class, you can break the physical or social steps into as small a set of sub-steps as you need to imagine. These steps become the action script to talk about or to follow into action. Sometimes this list remains a serious checklist to guide a student's actions. And sometimes you might break the steps into hilariously minuscule steps, like put your hand on the car door, pull the handle, put your right foot on the concrete, etc. When they see how tiny the steps can become, they often get moving just to prove that you are being ridiculous and to show that it's not that difficult to get out of the car and get into school. Some students need help becoming familiar with the building. So you can encourage them to begin noticing social events and experiences by suggesting questions for them to consider during their day. In effect, they become a detective to discover answers that can help them with the very problems they're experiencing. You can create a scavenger hunt that gives students a reason to explore the building and to talk to specific staff members. You can encourage students to accept a helper role to gain a sense of belonging at school. Perhaps they could read to younger students, take care of a class pet, or become an assistant in some way. It's important for us to take care of the deficits that cause the anxiety. We can recommend facilitated social skills groups or encourage a caring adult to organize a group that allows students to talk about social skills or their perceptions about school experiences. We can recommend intervention to improve academic skill level that caused anxiety problems. Ideas could include requesting informal support before or after school, peer tutoring, or more formal interventions. Since so much anxiety is based on self-beliefs and perceptions, it's important to expand a student's thinking patterns, gently challenging them about the way they believe others are judging them. Help them realize their tendency to catastrophize and to recognize that as they catastrophize, they become increasingly overwhelmed and less able to problem solve, and then more likely to use avoidance as a negative coping strategy. We also want to consider family interventions as we support our students. One of the best ways to help parents understand the importance of solving their child's school refusal is to talk about their child in the future. You'll want to explain to parents that the way their child is learning to solve problems now will become their child's personal pattern for problem solving in the future. We want to explain that this current school refusal situation is not about this quarter, semester, or even school year. We want to explain that they are helping their child learn how to solve problems for life so that their child can solve problems in their future school years, college years, career years, future relationships with spouses or life partners, and even in their future workplace environments or when they themselves become parents. Explain that they are helping their child learn to solve problems instead of staying home and avoiding them. In doing so, you will be equating this school refusal problem to a larger picture. I call it the school of life. As mentioned earlier, as you prepare parents to create reasonable expectations for their child, please also prepare them to anticipate their child's emotional response. Children may initially respond with escalated behaviors, increased school refusal, and sadness as they recognize the restoration of parental power. Help parents develop if-then scenarios so that they can be prepared with well-thought and well-intentioned responses. The attached knowing note also lists ideas to coach parents through the morning routines when their child balks at going to school. Some of these ideas include simplifying routines so there's less for a child to do in the morning, using a neutral voice with simple directions, avoiding a child's attempt to stall through conversations, especially conversations about why they can't go to school. Encourage parents to follow fair and natural consequences in relation to the incentives and rewards that go along with attending school. There's several recommendations you can share with school teams to help them. Here are some ways that school staff can help families and students with school refusal. A student may be more likely to exit the car if their parent only uses the carpool drop-off zone instead of parking in the lot and allowing the child to linger in the car. School staff can plan to meet the student at the car or can plan to have a friend meet the student there so that they can walk together. This way, the child can feel more supported and less likely to throw a scene in front of a friend. You can also have the friend or adult meet the child at the door, the front door. If a child is having a hard time separating from the child and doesn't seem to want to let go, so to speak, you can recruit the parent to become a school volunteer. That way, the parent begins to develop a sense of purpose and has their own personal need to separate and go off to their volunteer position. Planning for a morning and afternoon check in and out is helpful for building strong relationships. If you do that, I would recommend that you plan for a student to meet with a consistent adult for that morning check-in and afternoon check-out, and to talk about their day, to build some emotional bond, and to also just talk over academic situations. If a child continues to want to go home during the school day, you can encourage them to stay at school by explaining that the job is to keep their body at school. So you're going to ask them to do schoolwork in the office or guidance area for right now to build up their strength so that they can get ready to go to class and spend more time in class. And if a child comes out of class a lot, excessively, so that you feel like they're spending more time with the guidance office or school nurse or principal, you can recommend a proactive schedule so that they have specific times to meet with their trusted adult at school. That way, the schedule is built around the adult's availability. This kind of schedule might start with morning, noon, and afternoon check-ins and then taper to once a day or even every other day. The idea is to have the child follow the adult's schedule and to encourage the child to solve or write down their problems and to manage them in the interim, knowing that eventually they have a time to talk with their trusted adult. We want to help them stretch their coping skills in the time that they seek that adult. You can also encourage school staff to be flexible and creative about scheduling classes so that students have a way to catch up on lost credits once they get back to school. You can recommend that school staff assist the student in planning a reasonable long-term makeup schedule to help students realize that there is a way and a method to earn their credits and points. You can explain the requirement of earning high school credits towards graduation. I've seen that many of the high school students who refuse school do not know about accumulating credits for graduation. Then, as they learn that their school must follow state guidelines, they begin to feel less angry towards their school and school staff and quietly become respectful about the larger picture. Sometimes this conversation is just what it takes to motivate them to get back to school. It also moves them closer to recognizing the concept of natural consequences at a deeper level outside of their small sphere of reference. You can recommend that the school resource officer becomes involved in the student or family situation. And if a family continues to struggle to get their child to school, you can also recommend that school staff follow their truancy processes as warranted. We recommend that schools follow their truancy process as a way of providing a boundary for parents. When a school presses truancy charges, parents either make changes to get their child to school, seek help for their child to get to school, or face truancy charges, which ultimately brings additional help to the family. As we come to a close, I'd like to share a few of the references I've used for this presentation. Well, I hope this information becomes useful to you as you support students, parents, and school staff with school refusal concerns. If you have questions, thoughts, or comments, I invite you to contact me at karen.sexton@cchmc.org. My phone number is 513-803-8190. Thanks for being part of our 2020 HEAL conference. Bye-bye.